All right. Good morning, good afternoon, no matter what time you're watching this, KWUK, we're excited. And this is really a first, I believe, right, of having a conversation our training and our productivity and our coaching arm of KWUK together with our regional team discussing how all of you are going to be able to create more leverage. And so my name is Matt Teeter, and I'm here with Shannon and Ben, who you know really well. We'll let everybody introduce themselves briefly. Today, we're going to talk about the organizational model and what it'll look like as you continue to stretch and grow across the UK into higher levels within the nuances or potential differences or subtle changes you'll make from the standard model that we have. We're going to show you today as to what you're going to create. So my name is Matt Teeter. I'm an executive leadership coach here in the United States. I'm the director of coaching for KW Maps UK, and we're so excited to have the first license in the world with all of you. You've earned that opportunity, and there's going to be a lot more content like this to come. So Ben, for those people that don't know you, can you please introduce yourself before we start?
If they don't know me and they're watching this, Matt, there's something I'm really not doing very well, but I'm the owner-operator of Keller Williams UK. So, and this, look, Matt's absolutely right to be excited because this is the pivotal piece of building a business, right? If you want to spend time with the people that you love and have a successful business, what we're going to be sharing with you in this particular session is how you do that. Literally the step-by-step guide to being able not just to have a highly profitable business, but to have that leverage, which gives you the time to do other things that you want to do in your life too, right? So very exciting and frankly, a really important component part of how you're going to proceed to build the business you want to have. And Shannon, who on my screen is sitting to my right. So I'm going to hand over to you now, Shannon, and to introduce yourself, please.
Great. Well, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon Seelig. I'm your Director of Training and Coaching for KW UK. And I'm so excited because we're going to dig into the model that I have now seen work in the United States, in Canada, in France, and in the UK. So super excited to share with you guys tips and tricks around the model and how you can grow through massive leverage.
Okay, so we're going to jump right in. You know that there's 3 L's in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, the MREA book, leads, listings, and leverage. Today's about leverage, right? Big time. And we're going to cover, I'm probably going to cover all of them a little bit. So here's what we're going to look at. The really cool thing is this model you're seeing here is actually, well, let's go back to the first level. We jumped around. There we go. Okay, so this model that you're seeing here, I apologize, is what we're going to work off of today. And you may be looking at it going, this looks a little bit different or different than what I've seen. And we wanted to take an approach today where we're actually going to show you the 7-level model, what we would call the Millionaire Real Estate Agent second edition version of this model, according to Gary Keller, for the United States. And again, we're all clear that we're talking to UK agents and leaders here as you watch this video. Yet what we want to show you is what is a established, formulated, and agreed upon model. And then we're going to be having a dialogue where I kind of ask questions of our experts and Ben and Shannon of what changes will we possibly make or how would it look different. It's an important thing to know, as we get started, the model is going to be split no matter pretty much what country in the world we're in, with the exception of some extreme differences in the estate agency or real estate business, into 3 categories, right? The categories are going to be lead generation, operations, and sales. Lead generation, operations, and sales. And so you'll kind of see that split that way as we go through this conversation of a lead generation arm, an operational arm, and a sales arm. So just be aware of that the cool thing is that those categories are absolutely and nearly universally applicable for the model. We're just going to talk about title changes, potential hiring changes, and we will get to a point where we talk about at the end, what could a cost model look like? What could an economic model look like? And what we need to generate to do that. So level 1, it's you, right? It's you are taking every step. One of the things that we know in the United States is that in the US, there's 192 steps in a real estate transaction, right? And so we actually have if you go to Keller Inc., KellerINK.com, you can download a document that's 192 steps for a mega agent and see how many steps are in a transaction. Now, in the UK, I don't know if we've done all that work yet. Shannon and Ben will be able to tell us, yet I'm certain there's more than 100 steps, right? And so why that's so important is at level 1, you're responsible for all of them, right? It's all you. You do every step the entire time. right? And so anything else that you, Ben, let's go to you first on this one. We'll flip back and forth as we go. Ben, anything else you'd say on level one there, you know, on it just being you as an agent or a sole proprietor?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's a really key question to be able to answer as a business owner is, what is your hourly rate? Because one of the things that you get real clarity, and this is particularly useful as we discussed before the introduction, Matt, is that it's understanding the key activities that you're going to be leveraging. And if you understand your hourly rate, you can be more intentional and purposeful about the jobs you're going to give to somebody else, right? If you don't know your hourly rate, you can get confusion about which jobs you should be doing and which ones you should be giving to somebody else, okay? And that confusion creates procrastination and delays the decision-making on finding the right person. And most specifically, then when they're coming into the role, they're not understanding what is it specifically they're wanting to do. So one of the things that I really like here is, and you put under common mistakes, no schedule, no database, no scripts, is that without that, you're not systemizing yourself. And for you to be in a position where you can go to level 2 and make that hire on a predictable basis, you've got to start creating some system so you get some predictability in your results and performance. So I think those are really important things around, we are looking to maximize you when you're starting your business, because you don't have loads of cash, right? So you've got to maximize your performance, and the key activities and the common mistakes, I think, is very useful to get people very clear on, it's what I should be doing, and this is how I should be organized before I then move to level 2.
Yeah, so what I heard you say is everything I'm doing dollar productive, and for anything that's not dollar productive in the moment, am I building a system for it? So I loved that kind of two-stage approach. Shannon, what would you add here to level 1 before we move forward?
I just would send home the importance of building that database. Every single day, be adding those people to the database. Without that, there really is no reason to continue on to the other levels. And so get out and put everyone you meet into that database as quick as you can.
Yeah, and you know, Shannon, Ben, you're making such a great point, and in different conversations here in the future, we may actually do a conversation like this on lead generation, and make a lot of sense and be fun for us to do that again. And we can talk about the differences of what we can't do in the United States and everything you can do in the UK. It's a different call. And yet the database growth, there are things you can do in the UK. We absolutely are restricted by law from not doing in the United States that you can massively grow your database by. Yet that's another conversation. So let's move to level 2. Go ahead, Ben.
Let me just re-emphasize. I completely agree with you. Well, the point that Shannon's made is so critical, because moving through levels, if you know the number of people in your database and you run a really good 36 touch program, you literally can hire with predictability. And that's what I'm really keen to help all our business owners do in the UK, is not have too many of those horrible nights where you're sitting on the edge of your bed at 3 o'clock in the morning going, oh my God, am I okay? Well, actually, if your database is a certain size, you've got a great touch program that touches the client 3 times a month in a helpful, value-added way, you're going to be okay.
Yeah, and in the States, what we know is that research tells us, and why I keep saying in the States is that we just haven't completed the research. We haven't gotten enough data yet in the UK to be able to make all of these statements right through research quite yet, right? So we know that 6.37% of your database on a 36 touch should convert into an actual lead from the database, or a referral that turns into a transaction. So that's a number that you can start playing with to look at the number of transactions you need to do to fund your team and the size of the database. What you're going to start to find is the database will probably need to be much larger than you originally thought. So when we look at 2, it's you and an admin. And the cool thing about this is that it's ambiguous when we use the word admin, because we immediately are going to start talking about some of the differences here as to who that admin can be. Now, in the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, it says when you're doing all you can do, you hire administrative help. The book does outline that for many agents, that's going to be somewhere between 36 and 48 transactions, between 3 and 4 units per month, right? For many agents, again, models and systems are different. So when you're listing focused or just listing based, if that's how you're going to operate your business, as would be traditional in the United Kingdom, that number could be far higher right before you do this, or you feel like you need help. And yet this would be an executive assistant in the United States. So I'm going to stop talking about that and let's start talking about the UK. So Shannon, let's start with you here. What do you see that's either different in the role or title at level 2, or any of the responsibilities or thoughts that we have here for the UK?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is titles, they can change and they can adapt, and yet we really are looking for that partner for the long term who fills in the gaps that we don't have. As salespeople, we're really great with getting out there, being with the clients. We need someone who's going to really take that structure and move us forward and really build the foundation of our business. And I see a lot for us. Again, I'm going to sound a little repetitive, yet we're going to go back to database. I see this person is really going to start helping us hone in on that database and get more out of it by putting in more systems around follow-ups and enhancing those 36 touches and 19 touches and so on. So I really see that person is going to take that on and also start working on putting in place other aspects to generate those leads around getting our social media really powerful and so on, because let's be honest, we shouldn't be spending time on it and it's not our strength. So I really see that in the piece. They're really going to be looking at increasing that lead generation and database piece.
So
Yeah,
three areas.
I'd go with that.
Yeah, 3 areas, Shannon, that I just wrote down were database, and I love that you keep going to that. Social as a possible part of the job description, and then aspects of lead generation, particularly through follow-up or the 36 touch or the 19 touch campaign. So Ben, what would you add to that?
Well, I really love what Shannon said there. It's just the very simple language of database and get more out of it. This person's coming in to put better systems in. How do we generate more from this database? And how do I make sure that I'm holding? You want somebody that's going to hold the agent to account to make sure, do you know how many we've added to the database today? Right. So if the lead agent, you're running this business and you've taken on a great hire, that person is literally going to be saying to you each day, that's how many people you added for me today. And that's what I'm working with, because that'll be great focus for them. The other thing here, Matt, and I'm going to just look at this common mistakes piece, because I really see this is very, very important. You're looking not just to hire the person. What we're seeing is a lot of people hiring for what they need right now. And really what you want to be hiring is not just for the need of right now, but you're actually looking to try and hire somebody that has that emerging talent that could become much, much more within the business. So, if you take Gary, for instance, the 4th hire he made in terms of administration is now still working with him now and runs pretty much nothing happens in Keller Williams without that lady say so. So I think it's really important that we do 2 things. When we're hiring, we're really clear about not just what we want them to do right now, but who that person could become, because then that really alters the look that you take about the filters, if you have, through the career visioning process of the person you bring in. The second major thing is what the opportunity is you're going to create for that person. Because if you go looking for an admin and you find an admin and you pay them in line with an admin, what I'm seeing is time and time again, you're looking again for another admin to replace them in 6 to 12 months time. And that's expensive. And by that time, you've got a big database, you've got lots of leads, you're under massive pressure. You now are in a position where you're even more likely to make a bad hire because of the pressure you're under. So I think investing in that key hire and looking longer term as to what that person could be later on down the road will enable them, Shannon, to do what you've just described to an even higher level, because they understand where they're going to get to and the size of the opportunity for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, Ben. And so what I wrote down is that we future pace the hire, right? It's not just about who they are today, it's who they become in the future and how they're going to partner with the growth of the organization longer term. So, okay, as we stick with, and again, if we just going back to the beginning, we talked about lead generation, operations, and sales. So far, every hire is operational. Every hire lives in that kind of silo of operations on the team. And here we are at 3. Now we have a lead administrator, or what some people would call an executive assistant again. And in the States, this is where the model's from, guys. If you look at that title and go, oh, that title's interesting, we have a transaction coordinator. So this is where I think our role change would start to show up. Now, the comment that I would make, and you know, I'm the guy that's across the pond here, so maybe I'm completely wrong with this. The comment that I would make on this is that if you look at a traditional estate agency as it starts to grow in the UK, if it's very well run, it's basically a sales team. And so if you're, again, for some, and I'll be corrected here if that's completely wrong, yet a very well-run traditional estate agency is going to look like a lot like not seventh level, and yet a higher level or a larger team. And so as we think about roles, those might be some of the titles: sales progressors, negotiators, that we would look at. All right, so bail me out here. I may be talking completely the wrong language. Ben, what do you see happening in the UK at level 3?
So here's one thing we'll just say, Matt, is it's very important that people hear and understand what you've just shared, because the bit where I would say be very, very careful about a traditional estate agency model, and we've talked about this before, is I'm very concerned to see agents build what we might be considered a house of cards, right? Because in the traditional agency model, it is the good old-fashioned pyramid where you as the top agent is at the top, everyone else is going to earn a lot less. Okay, and this business is very, very different. So in an MREA model, the entire model is based around the size of the database and how you nurture that database to build referral levels of business, and secondary, to create opportunity for people in your team to build what they want to be able to build. And that is fundamentally and profoundly different from the traditional agency model in terms of the structure. So I know when you're using the language, a lot of what you're saying is right, but it's very important that people don't misunderstand that here, because there are real fundamental differences. And I want us to think very differently about building a real estate team, because the way we do it in the UK doesn't produce the results that we want either for the client or the agent.
So traditional, what I wrote down for you, Ben, is traditional could inform roles. It will not inform income. It could inform titles or roles, right? It will not inform the way that we compensate the people in our organization. Is that correct?
Well, I'll go further, Matt. And this is kind of, a lot of the senior, the experienced people in the UK will know this, that some of the biggest companies in the UK, as traditional estate agency models, when they go through a really difficult market, what they did was centralize admin, right? And centralizing admin destroyed an awful lot of businesses. And the reason they centralized admin is because they had no real understanding of the value. And if you look at what we're structuring here in these models, is everything we're building around that system and organizational model, not the other way around. So in the old world, traditional model, the cool young sales negotiator, they're the little superstar. In this model, you're going to value your administrator way more than anything, because they're going to be key to you building a millionaire real estate agent model.
Would you call it a transaction coordinator in the UK, Ben, or would you use a different title there?
Yeah, no, I'm comfortable with transaction coordinator. But I would say there are options here, Matt, in terms of lead admin and what you want in terms of transaction. Some people, they will decide that they won't want a transaction coordinator. They'll want more marketing-based lead. So that they may go that route first, in terms of we've got here operations. They might go lead generation off to our left here, where we'll see that in the later models. They might actually decide, I'm not going to go lead coordinator, transaction coordinator. I'm going to go here for more marketing-based administration, and I'm going out that way. And that's fine too, Matt. We're not saying to people, you have to do it exactly like this. We're saying, but there must be a purposeful, intentional structure to how you're going about doing it.
Okay, great. Shannon, what would you add to this? What adjustments or comments would you make on level 3 for the UK?
Yeah, I'd say that like Ben is sharing on the transaction coordinator, I could see that in the UK, depending on the agent's volume of instructions or listings, the transaction coordinator for us classically in the US starts at the minute that they put something under contract. They take over. I could see this actually the minute they take an instruction, that transaction coordinator steps in to help with some of that marketing towards that listing and really maximizing the instruction and then taking it all the way to close. So I could see just their job, them intervening a little bit quicker in the transaction to help make that process a lot smoother.
Okay, awesome. Shannon, we're going to come right back to you here in a second. So get ready, because now we're at 4. And what's happened is for the first time, we've actually now extended into lead generation, operations, and sales. So all 3 categories are now being touched on in this model that's going to continue to grow from here. One of the things that I see as very unique or different in the U.S. In comparison to UK model at the present time is I don't see a lot of lead management or lead generation or head of lead generation management. And the idea when you see OSA, ISA, that's outside sales associate, inside sales associate, the way to think about that is someone ringing the phone out, someone answering the phone call coming in would be outside is ringing out, inside is the call coming in, as it would be conventionally or traditionally defined. However, a lot of those roles are blurred, right? The title for ISA is a lot of times meant to be an outbound lead generator. OSA is often not even used. However, that's kind of neither here nor there. What this is that lead generation area is really taking the database and focusing on the database growth through adding new people in, and then focusing on the team and business growth through generating business and leads and or generating appointments for the team members through lead generation, which we're calling here lead management on the team. The other side, you see a showing assistant. You're going to start seeing what I believe is going to be a question mark or potential difference as the model continues to grow with our experts here for the UK, where the showing assistant's being hired in the United States for the buy side of the business, which is a growing and developing part of the business and the model in the United Kingdom. So, all right, I've talked a little bit about what we're seeing here, why the model does this, what's the necessity for leverage in the States at this level. Shannon, what do you see as important differences or conversation pieces or considerations for the UK when you look at 4?
Yeah, I definitely say we've seen some similarities in France where at this level, the lead generation becomes really crucial. And so having that person that can do outbound calls to set appointments for you, the lead agent, and to manage all of those leads that are coming in off of your listings and your instructions. We know you've got them on all of the different websites and Facebook and all that. So capturing those and converting those leads, this becomes crucial at this phase. So I'd say the lead manager is someone that you really want to make sure you have who's capable of doing outbound, making calls and setting appointments, and someone who has a little bit of organization and can work with that lead admin to really convert those leads that are coming in through database and socials. So I'd say that's definitely something that's not going to change. It's actually going to be probably more important in the UK than it is for us in the States, because getting those leads is really crucial around those instructions. And then the showing side, I can see that it could be an option, right? Of viewing someone to do those viewings. It depends on, how you're setting up your instructions, and if you're going to be doing those viewings as well to leverage that piece off, because we know when we take a listing or an instruction, those viewings can take a lot of our time, right? We're letting people in to see them. And so getting that off your plate as quick as possible will just allow for you to go and take more instructions, right? So I see there not many changes. It's just the title and the job function is going to be a little bit different, because that showing assistant is potentially not going to try and get client leads for us on the buy side, yet they are going to be a leverage point to take away those viewings that take away hours of our time for all of our instructions.
An excellent example that I wrote down as you were saying that, Shannon, if we were confused or wanted to learn more about a lead manager and beginning to build that lead generation arm of our business, is actually someone that gets to present, and we know pretty well in the UK, is Matt Fedek. Matt Fedek has an incredible, I actually shadowed Matt's ISA, OSA lead generation team when I was a team leader to learn how to present and teach this model myself, right, to our agents. So I think that's really cool. You guys have someone in your world that trains pretty often, is there in person several times a year that has that. So that's somebody to pick his brain and say, how did you build it? What does that look like? What's that structure? I think he's got like an 8-person team at this point. When I saw it was 6 or 7 or 8 at that point too, several years ago. So I love that. I definitely wrote that down. Ben, what would you add here at level 4?
Well, number one, this takeaway for us, Shannon, is let's get that dialed into the training calendar. We'll get. We're very lucky. We've got some incredible partners, haven't we? So let's make sure they're showing up on the training calendar on their special subjects. So I think to reiterate the points that have been made around having a lead manager, that means there's absolute focus on growing that database and rapidly growing that database. So I think that's a pivotal move here, and very distinctive move here for level 4. On the right-hand side, we're seeing showing assistant. We talked about this before. Showing assistant, yes, that could be, as Shannon described, it might be that you've decided to bring an agent in now who can list as well. That's absolutely fine. You've got options here because you've got structure and systems in place, haven't you? That's what we're seeing on the left and below. So here, I think you could bring in, Matt, you might bring in a lettings person here. You might bring in 2 agents. You might bring in 3 agents. That's okay, as long as they're defined as to what specifically you're wanting them to do. But you have some good choices here.
You know, Ben, one other comment I want to make before we continue to move forward is, and then ask you this question is, you actually brought up in our preparation for this session that we may not actually ever get to a lead generation arm or a sales arm of our business because certain, particularly and especially maybe luxury agents might just focus on building out their operations team at scale, right? Can you make any other commentary on that before we move forward?
Yeah, I'm seeing that as a very attractive model for certain agents in, I'll use Prime Central London as an example, Matt. Whereas literally that lead, and there's a wonderful example you gave actually in the States of, I think there's a highly successful doing 3-6 million a year in fees, but basically what she does, all the touch points which can't be replaced. She's the magical kind of that she does the bits that only she can do, but she's got a team of 6 administrators under her. Right.
Yeah.
So I want agents to know that, yeah, this is how I think the majority of people will do it. But I do think that it's important that you understand that actually, let's say the luxury specialist market, you could easily just now continue to build out under that operations and systemizing, so that everything, all the little points, you know, if you want, I don't know, Matt, let's say there's a certain stage you want an Hermes scarf or the little touch points that go to your clients, or a Fortnum & Mason hamper. I mean, that's always going to go down well, Matt, over here, right? You want those little touch points that you don't even need to think about it, because you've got epic marketing and administration people that literally just anticipate, like the staff at the Ritz-Carlton, right? They're just anticipating what's coming next. And that team can do that. It is probably more for the luxury market, frankly, Matt.
Yeah.
But equally, they have choices here. So I would say this is the majority, but then that other choice should be considered too.
Well, you're making a point that Gary Keller made at MegaCamp this year when he provided 5 different or alternative models for building a team outside the fundamental or standard model that we're looking at right now, the accepted and researched 7-level updated model. And that agent that you're referring, her name is Stephanie Vitaco, and she's in Los Angeles, right? And Gary's interviewed her several times on exactly that. So here we go to level 4, part 2, and we start taking these steps inside levels. I think that was a way that the KWU, the team, was able to keep it at 7 levels and not 13 or 14 levels. So we're at level 4, part 2 here. And what we see happen is the lead generation arm is now a lead manager, and it's split into a second person who's outbound or inbound. Again, we often see that title blurred, so I wouldn't get too technical there on what that is. The operational team has gone from a lead administrator or executive assistant to a listing manager and transaction coordinator. So now we're seeing listing work and transaction coordination. Ben, Shannon, you've already commented that might be marketing right in there too. So we're going to get more commentary from you here in a moment. And then we start seeing the sales side. And again, in the States, we're almost universally, and again, you could do it differently, yet almost universally going to leverage the buy side first. And again, the rule of thumb or a thought process is I would leverage first what takes me the most time and is the least dollar productive for me, right? So if you want to break that down to why that's happening, maybe in the UK that's lettings, right? If you have a lettings business you're operating, it could be the buy side of your business. If you have a fee that you've created for that on the buy side of the business, or you are working with buyers. And again, Shannon, we're going to ask you a little bit about your listing commentary here and when we leverage listings, because I think it's really important as well. Okay, so you guys watching this are getting the picture. You're starting to see how it expands and grows. We can move faster through my part. So Ben, any additional commentary that you would add here on level 4, part 2?
So the exciting bit for me here, I've already talked about choices. I'm not going to reiterate that, but I will say that if you look at that model here, what you can create with some adjustment to the title on lead buyer agent, because it doesn't necessarily be that, because we've just talked about the choices and options. But here, what you have, Matt, is if I put a shade of pink on lead manager, lead admin, and lead agent, right? What you have there is something that is just to be considered. You could really scale it. And when we talk about in the MREA model, 3 key hires, see what attracts me here is when we come back to the point of the organizational model around building out leverage, then actually with some focus on finding the right people here, you could actually have a very scalable business through only 3 people. So that's one of the things just to consider. Now, for a lot of the agents, for instance, if you went for agents, I'm going to try and get an agent to build that particular patch, and then this one's going to build in this patch over on this right-hand side here. That's okay, but remember, if all of those agents that you're bringing in are all reporting directly to you, you're creating less leverage for yourself because more people to hold to account. So just almost for me, sometimes, Matt, I quite like to picture those 3 roles in a sort of a different shade of red or a lighter shade, like a pink or something, just to say, notice that there is a difference if you're really wanting to scale.
Yeah, and if we want to reference what you're saying, page 275 in the MREA, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, touches on, from Gary, the 3 key hires of a millionaire business. And you're saying lead manager, lead admin, lead buyer agent could be that those 3 key, or lead agent is the word that you use. Lead agent could be those 3. I love that. Shannon, what would you add here before we go to level 5?
Yeah, I think that the key is as we look at this, the sales side, as we're going to call it, the agent side, is just being really smart around leverage. Like you said, looking at our time productive activities, and Ben said at the beginning of the call, is our dollar per hour. And so I know that in the UK, working with buyers is not something as common yet. However, I've seen it changing quickly in France. And so they're actually starting to represent buyers in France. And so I would say, let's look at how do we get that viewing assistant trained, and how do we have maybe someone who loves buyers who can take those, and then maybe it is another agent, right, to help with listings. It's just not forgetting that with every listing or instruction that you take, there will be people that call that want to buy. Someone has to buy it, right? And so how can we capture those leads and convert them? And so I would almost look at it, you've got the lead agent who maybe does instructions and captures some buyer leads. And then maybe you've got a buying agent, a buying specialist as part of the team at this point, not necessarily the showing assistant. You have someone who actually does really own working with buyers.
I had an interesting conversation with one of the agents in the UK, and we were talking about who all gets paid in a transaction, right, in the United Kingdom. And they mentioned surveyors, for an example, and I put it in my notes. And I said, well, what could a surveyor get paid? And they said sometimes up to £1,500. And I paused and I asterisked that, and I said, wait a second, a surveyor makes £1,500, and you represent someone in buying a house without any charge. Interesting. Anyway, we'll keep moving forward. Okay, so here's level 5, right? Here's level 5, and we don't need to do a lot here. With love and respect, I think we're going to be okay. There's only 2 things that have happened going to level 5. Number 1, we've split inbound and outbound sales, right? So we've just added one more person there. So if we look again, we've added one person there. And then the title for the lead admin has now been called a director. That's the only things that have changed here. So if it's okay, we're going to move all the way to 5.2, which is where the conversation starts to really change or be different. So here, right, we do have a fundamental difference, Ben, as you were talking about the direct reports, as you're talking about the people that work with us and not spanning it too wide. We have actually added a direct report here under this model. We've gone to a listing agent. So we have a buy side and listing side under our sales side of the business. Everything else, as you can see, remains the same, essentially from the last two levels before. So Ben, what would you add or what would you contribute here for differences or considerations for the UK?
The listing agent is key because in the UK, same as in the US, if you don't have listings, you don't have a business, right? So if you want sales, you've got to get listings. So the lead listing person, somebody that you have now that's very strong at listings, should be heading up that sales team because they're the ones that understand. They're setting the standard that everybody needs to work to throughout that business. It's the higher value service, right? So for me, this piece that we're adding, that listing person, in an ideal world, I said to you on the previous slide, Matt, a couple of slides ago, that we talked about lead buyer. I talked about lead agent. So really, for me, what this is saying, that you're adding another agent in there. You wouldn't necessarily have to go over the top. You could just go straight through that and having more listing agents. What I will say is, over the years of running multiple branches of estate agencies, when you put somebody that's dedicated to listing, that's what they do all the time, the amount of listings you will get, you go 3 times, 4 times the number you were getting, because people are not focused on multiple things, they're focused on one thing. So there's again huge opportunity for big scale when it comes to having specialist people on listings.
Okay, Shannon, anything else in level 5 before we move forward to 6 and 7 where it really starts to get different and fun?
Yeah, I'd just say, focusing on that listing and someone who's going to go and take listings all the time, don't step out. And it says it right in the common mistakes. Don't step out too quickly. This is an incredible opportunity for you to continue taking those listings and instructions and have double the force. So this is not a replacing you. This is an adding to the activities you're already doing. And I would keep a firm grasp on them until they do it exactly like you do, and they can convert at the same ratios that you are. So it's a crucial hire, and we don't want to give it away too quickly. We want to control that person. It's like the control curve that we see in FSO for leadership, right? We want to make sure we're hanging on and we're training them well, and we're not just giving it all away too quickly.
Great
Yeah,
point.
I'm glad that, yeah, that's an awesome point. And the other thing to bring up in common mistakes is no maps coach. And we're not just bringing that up because that's my representation here in the UK and the US as well. We're bringing it up because this is where we start seeing profitability either go one or two ways in a divergent. We've talked about in the pandemic there being a K-shaped recovery in economies around the world. Well, this is where we see a K-shaped profitability for teams. Some people's profitability starts to skyrocket here because they're paying attention to their profit and loss, to their balance sheet, and managing their expenses. Many people see their profitability plummet here because as they make additional hires, what they're carrying in cost of sale or expense is eating their profit. And so one of the big things is they may be paying too high of a split outside of a model in cost of sale, or they may be carrying expenses beyond what's necessary to be able to generate the higher level of profitability. We would target 40% or more across growth, right? And even higher profitability in the earlier stages or earlier levels. So again, it's just something to consider there. Having a coach is going to protect a lot of things and help you scale, help you think, help you hire. One of the things that the coach is going to help you with is how do we protect our profit and manage our expenses? And it says no maps coach. The other thing that happens here is there's often a rub with coaching because the coach is coaching to the necessary steps they have in place to be able to take that on, and people start to push back at this level too, because it's where you really start to operate as a true business owner, right? So let's look at level 6. Speaking of being a business owner, now what's happened is we've gone into a director of lead generation, a director of operations, and a director of sales. So now you really are seeing lead generation, operation, and sales, even defined by title of those individuals. To Ben's point, it's still 3 key hires. We've now just updated or upgraded all of their titles, right, to director in this place instead of lead agent or lead admin or lead manager. And yet the other thing that's happening here is an expansion agent. And so this is the important comment I would make here is it's not required to ever go to 6. It's not required to expand. You are not required to do these things or go to this level. And you can be a millionaire, net millionaire, I mean, netting over £1 million in income before you ever decide to expand your business. The last comment I'll make on that is Lance Loken has right now the 4th largest business in 4th or 5th largest business in the entire United States in Keller Williams, doing roughly 3,000 units a year as a sales team, and he has not expanded outside of Houston, Texas. So again, it's just an important conversation to have here, because a lot of people go, oh, expansion is the next natural required step. No, it's not. We have a whole class around that. It's called ESO, Expansion Systems Orientation, and I know that's going to be a conversation in the UK more often in the near future. Last comment I'll make is what expands is lead generation and administrative support. So if you were to take ESO, what you'd learn from Gary Keller is the 2 things that expand are administrative support and lead generation, administrative support. If you don't have your hub in place to do those 2 things, you cannot expand. Now, Ben, Shannon, I think expansion, as we get there and it becomes more common with this in place, is going to be incredibly profitable, impactful, and exciting across the UK, because of the accessibility of the UK, because of the size of the UK, for a lot of reasons. Shannon, what other comments would you make here on level 6?
I'd say, leaning into the expansion piece, expansion, like you said, Matt, it's the next logical step, and there needs to be a logic behind it. And so it's an incredible opportunity, and you want to make sure that that team is really solid below. Each director is really in place and really running their playbook before we go out and we decide to grow into another market. And when growing into another market, it needs to be logical. We've either got a bunch of leads already coming in from that area, or there's a lot of people that we're seeing that are moving to that area. And so it makes sense to put someone there to stop sending all those referrals out, yet to have someone there. And so it needs to make sense. I love the Lance idea of Houston, because I don't know about you, Matt, I saw a lot of teams not just expand locally and go state to state just because it sounded great, and the house of cards came down. All of their administrative support, everything fell down. And so just making sure that it's solid and then making sure that it's logical. I think that's what's key.
Great point. When you're talking about leads, the other term that Gary uses that you remind me of, Shannon, is your lead lever, right? What lead lever is on in that market? And you name the 2 primary things. Number 1, you have a direct referral market where you're already referring a lot of business, right? And then the second thing that happens is expansion a lot of times is an organic byproduct of the team having someone move to the market. So one of their agents moves to Manchester, one of their agents moves to Edinburgh, one of your agents moves to Glasgow, right? And so because you have someone you've already worked with and trained move to another market, that's something else that can, with proper support and administrative hub, open the door here as well. Ben, what would you add in looking at level 6?
That expansion's a really exciting thing, and I can see why we get very tempted by it. And I think funny enough, I was listening again to the interview Gary did with Morgan Heisel, the psychology and the book, The Psychology of Money. And one of the things that, if you want to feel wealthy, one of the things you want to do is make sure you build through the process of security first and comfort. And one of the things that I think is that I would just simply, it's kind of reiterating what Shannon's saying, and that is build the solid foundations that you have here before you start looking at expansion. You can expand probably 10 times faster and successfully if you've got great foundations. Expanding without great foundations because of that ambition and drive, we can go bigger, we can go faster. Well, I see there's quite a lot of stress involved in that, Matt, and therefore, absolutely, I'm not saying don't expand at all. I'm saying you should, but I'm saying that the focus must be on everything that's below the sort of the director of lead generation, director of operations, director of sales. For me, if you've got the right people in those roles and the teams underneath those, you've got the opportunity to build something spectacular, frankly. So love all of this, but my caution is absolutely around the attraction of expansion. It looks great for these guys and girls to look at, but just get the foundations in place.
Speaking of how attractive it is, here we go to part 2 of level 6. We're almost there. We've got 2 more left. And so what we've added here is we've added a director of expansion. So that expansion agent, now added a director, and they're operating in this model, one expansion business. If you notice, the director of sales is listing buyer and showing assistance. That hasn't changed. Director of operations, transaction listing. We've talked about, could that be marketing? Could be a sales progressor, could be a negotiator. Yet that hasn't changed. Director of lead generation has inbound and outbound. They've added someone else in outbound, and yet outside of that, it's fundamentally not changed. Ben, anything else that you'd add here?
No, I think this is, again, straightforward, Matt, providing we're sticking to the things we've talked about already on part 1.
Okay, Shannon?
Same, honestly, it's just the foundation is built, so just follow the playbook, right?
Okay, so finally, what happens is now 7, there's a big change, right? Or a couple big changes. Number 1 is that you've hired a CEO. So finally, if you notice, the U, which is the red dot, so to speak, throughout this model, has been at the center of the model the entire time. It's been the direct reports, right? And if you notice here, the direct report changes from the number of people, so it's 4 down to 1, right? So the big change is that we go out and hire a CEO. Now, not to get too far down this conversation, yet in recent masterminds, as recent as a couple of weeks ago, Gary really talked about the fact that there's innovative thinking and talent in the agent business, and there is operational talent in the leadership side of the business. And as our business continues to connect the dots between those two, we're going to see really powerful, large, expanding sales businesses. And so that commentary from Gary is really this. It's who's the operational talent to come in as a CEO, take on those direct reports. And really, if you look at it, everything below the CEO, so to speak, below the CEO has not changed from the level before. So if you look, right, it's exactly the same. What has changed in the model is there is a CEO, and the director of expansion now has multiple locations, right? The one other comment I'll make in common mistakes, you see no maps coach. I'll extend that to say that in large expansion organizations like United Home Group or Kristen Cole Network or others, right, over time, MAPS has coached 10, 12, 15, 20, 25 people inside of that expansion network or more. And so it's to start thinking about not, having one coach, right, would actually be inefficient. And putting a coach in your organizational model, we actually see a lot of our clients do that. They add their coach, or they add coaches under, people or above people in the organizational model, depending on how they think about it, to be able to add that in. It's a thought to look at this. Yet, Ben, as you look at this level, what do you think about? What would you add for the UK?
So, look, this is a very special place to get to, and I think with the language of bringing in a CEO, I think the way I look at it, Matt, I would want to be progressing my director of operations. If I've got the right person, that mindset of that person, my ideal would be to promote that person through to the CEO role. If you've got the right person. And that's for a number of reasons, because hiring in at that level, or bringing across, let's say, the director of sales, often the mindset of that person, you could be putting your whole organization at risk. And I rather like look, if you're in a place with a business at 7th level that you no longer want to even put any time into holding that business to account at all, you should sell it, right? You should sell it. Because when we're talking about passive income, it's still active passive income in the sense of it's your business, right? So almost you're here in this capacity, Matt, almost as the chairman holding the CEO to account. You're not having nothing to do with this. If you really want to be in that place, sell the business and take the money and put it into something else that you don't have to hold to account in the same way, right? So it's important that business owners understand 7th level doesn't mean to say you have nothing to do with it anymore. So the type of person you want in that CEO role, think very carefully. You don't want to be hiring somebody that then is going to be taking it in a different direction. And that's why I like the idea that you grow the talent from within the business.
So here's what I wrote down for you, Ben. Again, it's the comment that you do not need to take this step is the first thing I wrote down. It's not required. You don't have to get here. The second thing is that you're still involved in the business. You haven't completely separated unless you're selling. And the third thing is DOO, Director of Operations, to CEO is a path that you see working well. I love that. Shannon, what would you add?
Yeah, I love that piece of, if you want to not work to sell it, and I'd say go invest in a bunch of real estate and let that work for you, because getting to the 7th level doesn't mean we stop working. It's so true. And I agree with Ben so much in that you want to make sure that CEO is really someone that can move things forward, is going to be smart financially, and is really going to run a business. And so I truly believe it's someone that's going to step up in the team. That's that right fit that we can pour into every single day to grow their leadership lid, because they're running a massive organization every day, right? We can also equate it to look at a market center, right? Eventually a market center, when it launches, it's a lot like a mega team, right? The OP is that and you get your market center to a certain profitability, and that team leader becomes that CEO, and you just pour into them and create their world so big that they can create that world big enough for everyone else. And so I'd say, that's where the common mistakes is, yes, MAPS coach and MAPS coaches inside that organization everywhere, because it's massive leverage. When you have someone else, a partner, pouring into them and helping them grow, it's only a leverage to go faster and further. And then also working on your leadership all the time to just grow the people around you.
Yeah, so I love that. Shannon, one of the things you said that's so important is, right, kind of putting our ego aside, and as an agent looking at the market center and saying, wait a second, does the market center have a model that I can learn something from here? I loved that comment there. Two other things that we'd say here is, there's this idea of 30, 30, 40, right? Of 30% expenses, 30% cost of sale, and 40% profit. And so, which is kind of a standard operation for our economic and budget model. If you were to look at 40% profitability, and let's say you wanted to net $1 million, you wanted to gross $1 million. Let's start with gross $1 million. You wanted to gross $1 million, right? Well, you'd look at 30, 30, 40, right? To be able to establish what would it take to gross $1 million. This level will not support gross $1 million for you to be able to have anywhere near 40% profitability. If this GCI is £1 million, right, your profitability will not be 40%. In fact, this level in the MREA book is gross £2.5 million, so that your 40% profitability is £1 million, right, or $1 million US dollars as the example in the book. Here, you'd have expenses for your salaries of likely your CEO is on salary, likely your director of sales, maybe your agents are going to be compensated based on commission. Typically here, right? Yeah, you have options. Your director of expansion likely on salary plus bonus, right? Your entire operational team is on salary, and your lead generation team is on salary plus bonus. So there's an incredible amount of expense being carried here just through salary alone. So again, it's important to start modeling out what's the size of your database, right? And what is the number of transactions that we need to complete in order to be able to support the gross income for the team at this level, is for you to be able to net $1 million or more before you would step away. The second piece is, what do you do We didn't answer that question, right? So the U is now above the team, and we've said a lot of things about how they pour back into the team. One of the questions we didn't look at is, where do you go? And what you don't see drawn in here is something that Gary draws in a future model. And the course we're using this example from, which is called MAPS Models, coming to the UK pretty soon, which would be this. What you would do is you would look at other businesses, right? You continue to operate this business, and then you start looking at other investments or other businesses. I think the important point is there that until your team is leveraged to such a level that you can look at that, right? You're probably not, or not necessarily looking at other businesses. You may be an investor, you're not operating or building other things, right? Yet the you, as you said, Shannon, as you said, Ben, right, you're pouring back into this team, and you may now start looking at, okay, what else am I building? What else am I creating? So any other final comments as we kind of wrap up here, our exploration of what is the 7th level organizational model, the updated, this is MREA 2nd edition version, so the newest approved version for the States, and what we could be doing for the UK. Anything that you would wrap up or finish with? I'll start with Shannon first.
Sure. I'd just say seek guidance. This is a newer model in the UK. It was a newer model for us in France, and we really leaned on those who had built it before. And so I'd say anyone who's looking to build a team and grow to that level, reach out to a MAPS coach, reach out to one of us to really help guide you through that and figure out what level you're at already, what level you want to go to, and really get that plan solid so that you're not alone, because you're not, right? None of you are alone. You all have access to us. So I would just say seek help and grow forward.
Excellent. Ben?
I'd say it's very difficult to cut a piece of wood back to its original size. So study and plan first. Study and learn what you're going to do before you go and do it. And because I see the rush, I'm seeing it all the time, Matt, that people say, I'm going ahead, I'm going ahead, I'm going ahead. And actually, what they could, right at the beginning of MREA, Gary talks about, in Think Like a CEO, so many people would be better just to take a month to learn and study before they start. They could probably save 2 years in the growth of their business. So for me, what we've shared today, and really understanding and reading each of these to understand before I go to the next level, make sure, what does it look like when I've done it, so that we're not just reacting and losing so much time bouncing around from the mistakes that we made. What the idea is to learn from those that have gone before us, and we can shortcut what they achieved, not by being brighter or smarter, just by copying them and cut out the things they got wrong. So for me, learn first and then execute.
Great point, Ben. I'll finish with this to extend to what both of you just said. The MREA book was written by interviewing more than 100 millionaires in real estate and then looking at the commonalities or best practices and putting a model together. This updated version for the 2nd edition was produced by interviewing more than 100 millionaires in real estate, right? And putting together the commonalities and their best practices to update the model. Have you interviewed 100 millionaires in real estate yet? Have you interviewed 100 millionaires in the UK? Right? Have you asked 100 people that are generating that income those questions? And if the answer is no, you may not, or we may not yet have our best practices, right, established, or the commonalities to be able to move forward at a level where you can do so with confidence. So if we can stick to humility and ask questions, that may be the most powerful way that we could explore this moving forward. Okay. We hope and trust that, one, you're really excited as a MAPS client. You'll be receiving this and everything else that we do from these conversations. Number two, as a top agent in top masterminds, you'll be receiving these in every conversation that we do. And so hopefully you're sitting there going, okay, when's lead generation, right? When's the listing conversation? Where do we talk about going deeper into the details of these other areas? Those are coming in the near future. And then we're open to your suggestions and feedbacks as well. Shannon, Ben, thank you so much for your time. And we hope and trust, for those of you viewing this, that you've taken so much from this recording. You're rethinking about how to structure your team as you move forward, and reaching out to the leaders inside your organization, inside the region, and to MAPS to be able to help you progress forward with more profitability throughout 2022 and beyond. Have a great day.
Great call, Matt. Thanks, Shannon. Thanks, Matt.
Great.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.